Hello everybody, I am Lightning Stripe, and today it's time to take a look at Chapter 5's biggest lore dump, the mysterious Elderflower. According to Izzy, Elderflower is Bridalwood's oldest unicorn and the designated storyteller, and that means she's got a lot of info for us to drink up. From fashion references to long-lost stories, I believe she is the key to solving the mysteries of New Equestria. But the question is, can we actually trust her? Aside from explaining trees, recognizing Old Equestrian fashion, and giving us a weird story about bats, which I'll get to later, she specifically gives two references to very specific things. But weirdly enough, these things seem to contradict each other. When Zip calls her spry, she says she once went to a fancy wedding, but everyone kept changing shape. It's clear she's talking about Cadence's wedding and the changeling attack. But after the trip is over and she's complimented on her knowledge, she says her great-great-great-great-auntie Moondancer knew a lot of stuff. She couldn't have been more straightforward. But you might have noticed the same thing I did. How could she have been at Cadence's wedding, but still be Moondancer's great-great-great-great niece? Well, that's the thing. She wasn't. She couldn't have been both at the same time, unless she's some sort of time-traveling wizard. Instead, there's a much simpler explanation. She's wrong. Here, let me show you what I mean. We know Elderflower is Bridalwood's storyteller, and Izzy herself tells us that her stories don't usually make sense at first. My theory is that she's had so much information in her brain for so long that it's all become jumbled over time. She's heard the changeling story so many times now that her brain seems to think he was actually there. Meanwhile, she really is Moondancer's great-great-great-great niece. Speaking of which, I plan to go more into that in a later video, because if you haven't realized it yet, that can be used to calculate how long the time skip was, and you know I can't miss out on some hidden lore. But let's go back to Elderflower, specifically her stories. When Sunny and Zip bring her to the old hangar at Zephyr Heights, she tells them a story about a bat, a story neither of them understand. But what they see as a jumble of nonsense, I see as another piece of the history puzzle I've been trying so hard to solve. Her story goes like this. A long time ago, there was a magical bat named Dawn. She was surrounded by other bats like her, but one bat refused to get along with the others. The bat wanted to fly around and eat all the fruit for herself. So Dawn spoke to a spider, who wove a beautiful web to keep the mean, greedy bat away. In the end, Dawn was able to protect her nest, yet the greedy bat continues to this day to try and break the web. When me and Thunder first heard the story, I was certain that Dawn was Twilight, who found out about Opaline. But then that meant she wasn't the creator of the protection spell around Equestria. So who was the spider? As I kept thinking, I realized it was actually the opposite. Twilight is a spider, not Dawn. But then who's Dawn? Let's get some of the easy stuff out of the way first. This story is clearly talking about Opaline, Twilight, and the magical Invisibubble. The evil bat is clearly Opaline, who hungers for more power, and Twilight is the spider, who weaves the web that keeps the evil bat away. In other words, the protection spell around Equestria. And that leaves a mysterious new character for us to theorize about, Dawn the Bat. I've seen a couple people connect it back to that Alicorn painting we saw in Bridalwood, and how that Alicorn has a striking resemblance to Misty. Their idea is that this Alicorn could be Misty's mother, and might have been this Dawn character. As much as I love Misty, I have to disagree with this. While I agree this is probably Misty's mother, I don't actually believe she's an Alicorn. As someone who's been drawing a lot lately, I know very well how artists almost always put deeper meaning into their artwork. We all agree this was probably made by Alphabetal, but the meaning behind the painting itself could be many things. Personally, I have two very similar interpretations. One is that this could be Misty herself, surrounded by the things she liked and portrayed beautifully, like the perfect Philly Alphabetal pictures in his head. And what's more perfect than an Alicorn? My other idea is that this pony is indeed Misty's mother, and this piece is Alphabetal's way of honoring her. Maybe she's portrayed as an Alicorn because she's dead, and this is his way of portraying her as an angel of sorts. Alicorns have been compared to gods several times before. But I digress. Let's go back to what we know about Dawn. We know she's the one who found out about Opaline, and that she told Twilight about it, causing her to create the web. This could honestly be anyone, but when we look at the characters we already know, we're able to narrow it down. Firstly, I believe this should be a unicorn or an alicorn. An alicorn would make sense, specifically since they're both described as bats within the story. However, considering Twilight is also an alicorn and isn't described as a bat, I think the second possibility is more likely. Why a unicorn, you ask? Well, as open and inclusive as Twilight was, she seemed to have a lot more unicorn friends. And if this is indeed someone who was close to Twilight, two specific names come to mind, Starlight Glimmer and Luster Dawn. It could honestly be either of them, but for the sake of plot, I'll put my non-existent bits on Luster. Not only do the names match, but if it's true, we'd actually be getting lore for her. For Twilight's number 2 apprentice, we have yet to see her actually do anything. Near the end of the episode, we get another story, where, quote, the north wind went up against the south wind in this big dance-off that turned into a tornado. We don't hear the rest of the story, but at the end, when Zip asks if there are any hidden messages, Elderflower responds with, "There are always messages in the wind, dear." So I'll take that as a yes. This one is much harder to crack though, and I'm not sure I myself know the answer. The obvious choice is that this is about the Wendigos, and considering all the talk about winds, it makes sense. What doesn't make sense is when you try to connect it to the rest of the story. A dance-off doesn't sound at all like the magic training monsters of winter we used to know. Maybe they're talking about the sirens and Equestria girls? The dance-off makes sense now, and the two winds could be symbolic to the sirens in the main six of Equestria High. But how would I even know that? And what about the tornado then? As far as I can remember, there has only been one confirmed tornado in Equestria, when Rainbow Dash went up against Lightning Dust. The two fastest Pegasi racing each other, two opposing winds. The dance-off could simply be a reference to how the spinning machine made him extremely dizzy afterwards, or how flight is now associated with dance due to the new Pegasus royalty. And you remember what happened when Lightning Dust turned the machine up too fast? That's right, a tornado. Is this useful in any way? No. The only thing it does is prove that Lightning Dust's story has cemented itself into history, and even I can admit that's harsh. But what do you think? Am I right about Elderflower's jumbled knowledge? Who is this mysterious new dawn? And what about the wind story? Let me know down below in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and, as always, remember, friendship is magic.